evening. Good evening.
Hey, mate.
Ooh, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. How are you? You all right?
Mate, Sunday night. Oh, let me tell you about my day. So we've got a new puppy. And we took the puppy from some friends because they had a litter of dogs. And they had one that wasn't very well, wasn't feeding. It was the runt of the litter. And that is what has kept it alive, right? Can you see that?
Yeah.
So this is little Everest. She's called Everest because she's had to climb a mountain to get this far. So she's been bottle fed since birth. And we collected her. I collected her last night on the way home from the game, and there she is, looking a lot healthier. She must have done 22 poos today. I'm not joking. I've got a friend who took one of the other dogs, and I messaged him, and he said, "We haven't had a single poo." That's the other end of the scale of problems. It's like every 2 minutes, quick, get her outside. But it's all good. How's your weekend?
Just in the kitchen, nowhere else. Is that where?
Yeah, at the moment we tile floor in the kitchen, doors shut. You're right, but she's a good girl. Already when she drops to the back door, we know she's off to the toilet. But anyway, we're here for the Series 4 preview for the High Performance Podcast, which starts tomorrow.
I know, it's so exciting, isn't it? That I feel like we've had some of these lined up for a while, haven't we? So I'm really excited that they're going to start seeing the light of day and people get a chance to listen to them.
Well, should we just get straight in, right? Because there'll be loads of people tuning in now wondering about Series 4. Should we just get straight in with a clip immediately and show people the kind of thing they can expect?
Brilliant. Go
on. Okay. Right, here's the deal. Let me just explain if you've not seen the High Performance Podcast before, right? There's no secret to success. There's nothing successful people do that you can't do. It is all about mindset. It's all about approach. It's all about belief. It's all about dedication. It's all about hard work, but it's all there for you. And we have conversations on this podcast with people from all different walks of life, purely so that you can learn the things that they've done. We've done about 30 episodes so far. Let's say each person's taken 20 years to learn what they know. So far, we've brought you 600 years worth of learning. When you put it like that, it's quite a lot, Damian. And one of the people that joins us on the new series is Eddie Jones, the England rugby manager. It was an absolute pleasure to have him on the podcast. He's listened to it. He was keen to be on. And we started by talking about James Haskell and the work that he did to get him to perform for England. And again, it's not a conversation about rugby, even though this is a rugby example. It's a conversation about life. So if you run teams, if you've got issues with personal relationships, if you're trying to get the best out of someone, our podcast is a podcast for you. So this is what you can expect from Eddie Jones on Series 4.
So what characteristics do you look for then, Eddie, when you walk into a room like that? So if it's somebody that you want to keep?
People that are going to be positive influence that either have a massive work ethic or have great character. Like, probably a good example is Haskell with England. He'd been a bits and pieces player and he had something about him, and you could tell the boys liked him, but he wasn't possibly brave enough to be himself. So what I tried to do was get him to be himself, like a big physical guy, play like that, don't be afraid to make mistakes, and then be that life of the party type character off the field.
And you wanted that from him. How did you get him to that place then?
Well, it's always the communication you have with them. I think at the start of the Six Nations, I guaranteed him a spot for the whole tournament to make him believe.
And maybe to take a bit of pressure off as well.
Yeah, take the pressure off him. Because you always, and you guys know better than anyone that you're always either trying to put pressure on or you're trying to take pressure off, and your ability to read what they need at that particular time is important.
Here's a guy, Damian, who has created success through creating cultures. What is the thing that stood out for you from that interview that you think people are going to enjoy hearing?
I think it's a people business. It's a people business that, in terms of what Eddie shares, like you say, we're not talking about rugby players. You're talking about people. And that example of James Haskell was really good. That if you listen to the two things he did, he gave him psychological safety by saying to him, "Your spot's guaranteed. So feel free to make mistakes without the fear of consequences." And then he told him that he trusted him for who he was. He didn't ask him to be somebody he wasn't. He just asked him to be himself, which is the greatest gift a coach can almost bestow on any player, is not asking them to be anybody other than than show up and be themselves the best version of it. And I think that's what he's done. If you look at Eddie's career, I think he was a school teacher, wasn't he? And when he told us that so many of his lessons that he applies now in elite sport will learn in classroom environments. And I think that's really interesting for people to understand that a lot of those principles can be translated.
I think it's brilliant. And again, it's an example, isn't it, of what we talk about on the pod, which is taking responsibility. And it's very easy if you're a coach or you're a manager in a business to say, do you know what? That person's got problems. I can't sort out their problem, end conversation. But actually what Eddie Jones is doing there, he's taking responsibility for James Haskell, for his performances, for how he feels. And that is the key, I think, when we talk about responsibility. We talk, don't we, about responsibility for every single facet of your life. And once you can get your head around that concept of taking responsibility for even the things that are not your responsibility, you realize the power.
Exactly. I think it is a superpower because then nothing that comes your way ever phases you, because there's always something that's controllable. And one of the big factors of underperformance is when people learn helplessness. The idea that they don't believe that they've got any influence over events, that they're almost victims of it. And I think when we keep emphasizing this idea of complete responsibility, you can never be helpless in that case. There's always something you can do to move forward and keep improving.
Listen, we love you to get your questions in. The whole point of the podcast is to create a community. Quex has asked a question. Are there techniques that coaches can use to help deliver bad or less favourable news to players? Some of you watching this might not know, but Damian works with all kinds of elite teams. Some of them we can name, some of them we can't. But what advice do you give for coaches who have to give that bad news to people?
Give good and bad news in the same way. So do it quick and then give them something tangible. Don't lie to them. Be really honest. Tell them something that if it's something they haven't done or something that they can improve on, explain to them what that is. And but be honest with them. When I speak to players around what they want from coaches, there's two things that always comes back. First of all, there's transparency. So just be really clear, open and honest. And secondly, be consistent. And I think that's always important then. When I say about good and bad news, deliver it quickly and in the same way. I think they're the two aspects. There's no sugarcoating it. I think players hate it when a coach tries to sugarcoat it or try to soften it. Sometimes just give them the news and then be comfortable with being uncomfortable for a few moments.
It's interesting actually in my job, because TV is not the kind of place where people like to deliver criticism or feedback necessarily. It's too nice and friendly and fluffy for that. But then when you work in the area I work in now, which is in sport, you realize that when ex-players come to you, one thing they hate is no feedback. They hate not being told the stuff that needs to be improved, or even sometimes the good stuff. You know, some of them think being told the good stuff is a waste of time, I know. But we always have to remind ourselves, these are people who for 20 years have had feedback every single day, every touch, every movement, every performance, every weight they've lifted in the gym, every meal they've eaten. They've been given feedback for improving. And I think it's important to remember that, isn't it?
Yeah. It really is a gift in terms of taking it and getting it where it's tangible and you can do something with it. Like a really simple example I think of is, if you want to know the value of feedback, the most effective way of keeping people to a speed limit on a road is when you drive through those radar displays that flash your speed up. Because what the evidence says is you stick to the speed limit for about 7 miles longer than any other method. And that's because you're getting feedback in terms of this is the speed that you're doing. It's clear that there's a consequence to it. You know, you're breaking the law or not. And therefore it gives you the chance to change your behavior in real time. So people respond to that. And I think in real life, when somebody gives you feedback on this is what you didn't do particularly well, this is why you need to focus on it, you then have a choice. If you want to take complete responsibility, you listen, hold your hands up and then implement it.
Very good. Keep your questions coming in, everyone. Just hit the question button. Annie would have said, I'm new to the podcast. What can I expect? I'll tell you what you can expect, right? You can expect to hear from people you may have heard elsewhere, or you may think you already know, and you will find out that you didn't know them at all, and the questions that you've heard elsewhere never really got to the very heart and the very center of what that person needs and should talk about. One of those conversations we had, which is the first episode of the new series, which starts tomorrow morning, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, is with the Leicester captain and goalkeeper, Kasper Schmeichel. And he talks here about how vulnerable you are as a goalkeeper, how exposed you are as a goalkeeper, and his attention to detail. And remember, he's talking about it in the context of sport. But if you're not involved in sport, it's still as relevant to you, because this is about tools to equip you for life. Have a listen to Kasper Schmeichel.
The slightest millimetre is the difference between success and failure in my profession. And as a goalkeeper, you cannot make mistakes. You have to be perfect. Any mistake will cost your team. That is what they say. I always hear this thing that goalkeepers are crazy, this, that, and the other. Yeah, to accept and love and revel in that responsibility, you have to be crazy, because, like you say, you are operating on the edge of failure every single time. So you have to love that you are the guy who has to be perfect every time.
Enjoy that.
I don't think you can be a keeper if you don't enjoy that. You have to accept failure as part of the game. It is absolutely part of the game, and I will dissect every single goal that goes in and think I should have saved that. Everything, doesn't matter how it goes, whether it's near post, as your commentators love to talk about, which is rubbish. But any goal that goes in, I will always look at it and think I should have done that. I could have done that. Why didn't I do that? I will always find a reason why I didn't save it and say I should have done something else.
Anna Z Tucker 89 says, slightest millimetre he talks about was on the show today with the save that he put onto the bar. And what I think is great about that conversation, Damian, is when he talks about living on the edge of failure. And it's quite a strong mindset for people to get into, where they are almost guaranteed to fail at some point. Because I think that only by existing and operating in that tiny window where failure is almost a certainty is how you reach your limits. And there's no way Kasper can find the limits of his goalkeeping without failure. The difference is they call it training, but effectively all they're doing every day on the training ground is failing.
Yeah, and what I found really fascinating about Kasper, like taking that very point, was how he applied it to the bigger picture of his career. So when he spoke to us about he'd been at Manchester City for a number of years, they'd sent him out on loan, he'd come back and they were signing new goalkeepers ahead of him. So he decided that to stay would be to fail in his career. So he went 2 divisions below to restart and reset his career at Notts County. So I think that whole idea of being comfortable with failure in order to risk great success is not just true for him as a goalkeeper, but for life in general.
Yeah. There's a good question here from Jurgen357 saying, where would you draw the line between not giving up on what you want and maybe realizing something is not for you and you should try something different?
I think that's a brilliant one, but I think, like, we've asked people this, haven't we, on it? And I think it's the moment that it stops becoming a pleasure. I think the moment that the grind. So when we spoke about the grind last week and we shared examples of it, it's when you stop enjoying getting up and doing the work in the shadows. Maybe that's a moment where you need to find another hobby, another career, or something that you love.
I think the other key as well, Jurgen, is when you say where would you draw the line between not giving up on what you want. I think one of the keys and one of the secrets to pleasure and happiness in life is wanting what you have. Because I think that if all you're focused on is when I get there, I'm going to be happy and then I'll feel I've achieved my goal. I promise you now, when you get there and you achieve your goal, it won't feel like that at all. I remember having a really good conversation once, Damian, with David James.
Yeah.
And we should get him on the podcast, actually, because he's a fascinating character. But he was talking to me about when he won the FA Cup with Portsmouth.
Oh, yeah.
And he said he saw all these players around him dancing and celebrating. They finally won a trophy. And he looked at me and he was thinking, I don't feel anything. I've waited all my career to win a trophy and I feel absolutely nothing. All I'm thinking about now is training tomorrow, the next game. How can we repeat the success? Are we going to invest in players to make sure we win again next season? What about that goal that I still let in last Wednesday night, still playing on my mind? There is no yet, as Matthew McConaughey said on this very podcast. You've got to enjoy the process because it might be that the destination is not as exciting as you think it's going to be.
Yeah, very much. I mean, that really correlates with recently. I've been listening to a book by Neville Southall, the former Everton goalkeeper, and he talks about how when they won the FA Cup in 1995, when they beat Manchester United, he said that he just got in the car and went home, and he had a to celebrate and drove home. And he went because he was at a stage of his life where going and getting drunk on the back of a trophy success didn't excite him. It wasn't anything that interested in him. But because exactly he'd enjoyed the grind to get there, not the outcome of having to win a trophy to validate himself.
I also think the kind of person that can get themselves to that point is the kind of person that when they get to that point just wants to go to the next point anyway. Lots of nice questions coming in. Ted Amari, how many episodes do we plan on having over the series? Top work, by the way. It's probably worth explaining, actually, Ted, that this series of the High Performance Podcast looks a bit different. Damien, people are not going to be able to avoid us, are they?
No, we like a bad penny. We'll keep turning it up, I think.
Basically, we're going to release an episode on a Monday, every Monday. And then every Friday, we're going to give you a bonus episode. And there was a nice comment in here, actually, a second ago about those bonus episodes. Oh, yeah. Andy Livingston said, love the bite-sized clips. Great reminders and makes you go back and re-listen. So Monday, the podcast. Friday, lovely little bite-sized clips of previous episodes and little learnings, which me and Damian discuss on those episodes. So it's more than just hearing those comments again. Then every other Wednesday, we're going to give you an extra episode just because we've had so many comments from people saying to us, I need more from the High Performance Podcast. So there's a lot coming people's way, Damian.
Yeah, definitely. And I think some of these bonus episodes, I think this from some real fascinating people. And I think these are the episodes where I'd encourage people, even if you haven't heard the names, trust us that there's something incredibly valuable going to be contained in each one of them.
Pierre says you can't wait for the John Terry episode. I was talking to someone this evening about Sol Campbell and the things that we're hoping to talk to Sol Campbell about. I can't wait for you all to hear Jo Malone as well. She was amazing. She created, I'm sure you know, that incredible perfume brand, but her personal story is amazing as well. How about we hear one more clip that we're going to be bringing people on Series 4? Do you want to introduce this one, Damian?
Yeah. This was one that we did last summer, and it was a real treat to do it. It's Osi, the BBC commentator on the NFL. But the reason I'm sort of hesitating is because there were so many angles that we could do with him. And in the research, I'd read this really fascinating story where he was married to Miss Universe, and he spoke about. He had this brilliant idea of just, I'm not impressed by titles. It's the person that really counts. And then he turned up with Miss Universe, his wife, didn't he? And I think me and you were impressed with titles in response.
He's an impressive individual on every level. Should we sort of just preview this clip by saying he's talking about Tom Brady? And again, he talked, I suppose really what this clip is about, Damian, for people who aren't playing American football, is the importance of attention to detail.
Yes, definitely. So he talks about, it's topical given the Super Bowl will be next weekend, but he talks about when he comes up against Tom Brady and how he studied intently. Tom Brady was looking for, if you think of it like poker, he was looking for a tell, just something that would betray Tom Brady's intent. And in this clip, it's a couple of minutes, but he tells how once he found that tell, how he utilised it to his own advantage.
Here it is.
I think the Super Bowl, for instance, we're playing against, the first one we won was 2007. We're playing against the New England Patriots. Tom Brady, greatest quarterback ever, supposedly. They were undefeated. They hadn't lost a game that year. They were on their way to being the greatest football team in history. But as I was watching the tape, this was because you have 2 weeks leading up to the game. As I was watching the tape, I noticed that Tom Brady, he would come up to the line of scrimmage, and this is real information I'm giving you here, worth millions of dollars.
Love it.
I'm giving it to you right
there's
here.
People recording this to pass it on to their players.
Yeah, but what I noticed was he would come up to the line of scrimmage and he would, say hot, hot, which is telling the center to snap him the ball. So what he was doing was he would come up to the line of scrimmage, and before he said that, he was pointing at somebody. Maybe it was like somebody on the opposing side, and he would point at that person. And if he didn't point at that person, that means they weren't going to snap the ball. But if he did point at that person, the ball was coming as soon as he said hi. So after I watched this, I studied this for literally a week. And I went back, I watched all the games, and he was doing the exact same thing. But nobody had figured it out. So I saw that, and I went and I gathered the whole defense, and I was like, listen, this is what this man is doing. And if you know when the ball is being snapped as a defensive line, if you know when that ball is being snapped, you are at a tremendous advantage over the offensive lineman, because they're relying on you not knowing. Now, we all started to watch this together, and we saw this was 100%. It wasn't even, it wasn't even like 80, this was 100%. So now we knew going into that game that as a defensive line, we were going to be able to overwhelm them offensively simply because of that one thing that I had pointed out. And we went into the game and we sacked him like 5 times, hit him like 20 times. They couldn't understand how we were getting off the ball and getting to him that fast. And it was simply because for 2 weeks prior, I just sat there and I had watched what this one person was doing. And that gave us the mental advantage going into the game. We knew we were going to win that game, even though nobody else did, because we knew something that they didn't know and nobody else knew that we knew.
Do you know what I love about that clip isn't when he talks about the attention to detail or even the thing that he discovered. It's when he says we knew going into that game that we were going to win. Even if that bit of information, right, is not the reason that they won the Super Bowl. I'm sure it is, and OC, I wouldn't dare to say otherwise. Let's imagine for a minute that's not the information won them the Super Bowl. What did win them the Super Bowl? That information made them think they were going to win the Super Bowl. And it comes back to talk. Tell yourself something great's going to happen, and invariably it will.
Yeah, definitely. And I think another thing on top of that OC shared with us was we asked him, didn't we, about when he's so in his experience of winning 2 Super Bowl titles, how much of it was down to culture and the soft skills of him and all his teammates, and how much of it was down to those hard skills. And he attributed 70% of it was down to just getting on with each other, trusting each other, having each other's backs. Whereas when he didn't win it, he said it was the opposite ratio, where 30% trust and 70% was down to technical skills. And again, I think that's a big, powerful message for people to understand that we're talking about soft skills here. Like wherever we work, we can all invest time in developing that trust, that ability to hang out with each other, to have faith in each other and their analysis. There's so many things that are replicable, whether we're talking about winning a Super Bowl or whether it's in a classroom or delivering better sales results.
Love that, mate. I love that, because that, at the end of the day, is what it's all about. Personal relationships, fighting for each other. And I think if there's one thing that is undermining this world at the moment, it's being selfish and not thinking of others. But let me just run through a few questions. Tom H, Treble 07, when is Toto Wolff coming on? In the diary. In the diary. Someone else has sent a message saying they would love Gareth Southgate to come on. The conversations, again, are ongoing. There you go, Pierre. And yeah, I think that may well happen. Cowley 100, quick one for you, Damian. How do you get over and deal with negative bias?
Well, that's an interesting one. How do you deal with it? First of all, acknowledge it. So don't fight it. Just acknowledge it and then try and bombard it with facts to change the perspective. So once people have been heard and they feel that they've been heard, otherwise they become entrenched in that particular view. So if you think about it, I'm having the conversation with my young daughter at the moment where she's learning the times tables and she says, I'm not good at maths. So that's a negative bias. And I keep saying, you're not good at maths yet because we've not worked hard enough on it. And we leave ourselves open to the possibility. Whereas if I was to say to her, you are good at maths, she becomes entrenched and argues against herself. So what we say is, no, we accept you're not good at it yet, but let's keep working hard and we can improve it. So hear them out first of all, and then try and give them that idea, that growth mindset with facts about how we're going to move forward.
Yeah, I love that. And there's people always ask on here as well, quite often, about dealing with other people's opinions of themselves, not just your own opinion of yourself. What I would say, right, when it comes to other people's opinions, if someone else wants to create a fictional version of you, just so they can dislike it. There's nothing you can do about that. It's totally incorrect. And so don't waste your energy worrying about it. We're in a world where it's never been easier for people to share their opinion of you. On here right now, people can chuck their opinion about our podcast and us and the work they do. No problem at all. They can do it if they wish. And because I'm sitting here seeing the comments, we'll see those things. So you have to try and create this armor around you. I think it's really important. I'm sure you agree, Damian, where other people's opinions can't matter. They can't matter if they are just general people and they don't know you. Because if they don't know you, they've just created their own version of you in their head, haven't they?
Absolutely. In fact, this was a topic of conversation that people can hear Casper Schmeichel talk about tomorrow, where he has that great line that he says, never take criticism from somebody you wouldn't receive advice from. And he talks about he has a board of 6 people that he takes advice from, and therefore they're also open to criticising because they understand him, they understand what he's trying to do. And he knows that they care about him. And I think that's a really powerful point for people to realise. Don't try and please everybody because you'll never do it and you'll cause yourself incredible amount of unhappiness in the process.
You're just draining yourself, trying to change the mind of someone whose mind can't be changed because they've decided what they think about you. Right, well, we're pretty much done, Damian. Before we go, we would like to have a little look at a book. People often ask us, have we got a little book that we can recommend for them? Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll start with this one. This is from a guy called Jérôme Lanier, and it might be ironic given people are watching this on social media. Explain it. His argument is 10 arguments for deleting your social media account right now. And why I share it is I'm not advocating that anybody deletes it or telling anybody what to do, but I think sometimes it forces us to think about what we are putting out there into the world and what we're receiving as well, and whether it's true. A bit like that last point, we're receiving people sanitized best version of themselves, and sometimes the impact it can have on us isn't always healthy. So it's not I'm not advocating people delete it, but I'm certainly advocating you make yourself aware of the impact and the effects it can have on all of us, and just feel that you're wiser for understanding that.
Really nice. I'm going to go with this. This is a book that just came in the post because this person is going to join us, and it is. I'm not very far through it, but so far it is fascinating. Have you got a copy as well?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, it's brilliant, isn't it?
Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference, and he says negotiating as if your life depended on it, because that is basically what he did for a living in America. And he writes about his experiences. He writes about the thing. If I put my reading glasses on, I'll just read a little bit of a synopsis on the back. It says, former FBI hostage negotiator, offering a new field-tested approach to negotiation effective in any situation, rooted in real-life experiences. From the rough streets of Kansas City, Missouri, Chris Voss joined the FBI, where his career as a kidnapping negotiator brought him face-to-face with bank robbers, gang leaders, and terrorists. Never Split the Difference takes you inside his world of high-stakes negotiations, revealing the 9 key principles that helped him and his colleagues succeed when it mattered most, when people's lives were at stake. Really good so far. And the chapters: be a mirror, don't feel their pain, label it, beware, yes, but master, no, bend to their reality, create the illusion of control. I know that none of you, hopefully watching this, are bank robbers and terrorists, but it's still going to help you in your life, because negotiation is key in every area. Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference. And that is it, Damian. Series 4 of the High Performance Podcast is going to be in people's inboxes in about 3 hours' time. I'm excited for them.
I am as well. I feel like a kid at Christmas.
I know. I think it's the best. I've loved every series, but I think this is the best series we've done. I just think the variety of the guests, the conversations that we have, the depth that we go to. I think we're probably learning so much as we go along, aren't we?
Yeah, massively. I think I think to use Clive Woodward's analogy about being a rock or a sponge, I think we're sponges very much. That we're coming along with this, looking to learn and absorb so much that we can apply in our own lives. And I think, yeah, you're right. This series has been really illuminating, and I've taken several things from even the Casper chat that we had relatively recently that comes out tomorrow. There's a couple of really quite profound statements he made that have made me think.
Brilliant. And there's the weekly schedule. You need to make a note of this. Episodes every Monday, bite-sized short episodes with Damian and I discussing what we've learned every Friday. And then every other Wednesday, we'll bring you an extra episode of the High Performance Podcast. Find us on Instagram at High Performance. Damian is at Liquid Thinker. Also, track us down on YouTube. We've got tens of thousands of subscribers there. Just type in High Performance Podcast, and I think we're almost up to 3 million views of our conversations on YouTube. So that's really, really exciting for us as well. So that is it. Thank you for all the comments. Thank you for being part of the story. We wouldn't be here doing this if it wasn't for all of you. We also wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't for Lotus Cars. They've been there since the very start, and they'll continue to be there. So thanks to them as well for their support. Can't wait, Damian. I'm actually excited for people to hear these conversations now, you know?
Yeah, me too. And that's why feedback is so important for us. So how can we get better? How are people using it? How are they applying it? I'd encourage people that when they're listening, give us something constructive.
Brilliant. Have a great week, everyone. It's all there for you. So go out and get it. Take care. Enjoy the podcast.